start off 2025, I went a little bit of a food journey. What I mean by that is I got a meal kit for the first time. And I know meal kits have been around for a long time, and a lot of people find them very useful for their families, or they really enjoy them because they don't like to cook. But I've been putting them off for a long time. Every time I saw a HelloFresh in my mailbox or Blue Apron ad, I always push it off because one, I love to cook, and I felt like it was going to take away that joy of making food and trying new recipes and all those things. And then two, kind of the opposite end, I'm a pretty picky eater. I have a lot of texture aversions, which means that there's lots of fruits and vegetables especially that I don't like the texture of, so I tend to have to blend them or eat them differently or avoid them, and I didn't think meal kits were going to be very good for that type of thing. However, I decided I'm going to give it a chance this year because of a couple reasons. One, I have a lot of food waste. When I buy things at the store, they're not portioned for a single person, and I tend to throw a lot out and waste a lot of money that way. And two, I just felt like it might be a good way to get a little bit of variety. I tend to make the same kinds of meals. Even when I try different things, it kind of falls in the same chicken, pasta, broccoli, or something like that. Those kinds of things are my go-tos, and I felt like I was in a bit of a rut. So I decided that I'm going to try 6 different meal kits, 1 per month, for the first 6 months of 2025, and decide if I think that they are worth it based on the quality, based on the time they took, based on the food waste and the variety, as also based on price. So I thought I'd bring you along for the journey and show you what I've tried in the month of January. Disclaimer before I go any further, I did look at a lot of YouTube videos and reviews and blogs of all the different meal kits before I decided which 6 I wanted to try, and I will say that although factor in Cook Unity and things like that where there's pre-portioned, just heated up kind of meals on a lot of people's lists, and I know that they are very yummy. I've heard great things. I've actually had a factor meal and liked it. I didn't pick those for my 6 months because I wanted things where I actually was in the kitchen making something, because I know that's something I like to do, especially after a stressful day. It's like something that feels good to me. So I did not do any heat up type of meals. The one that came up the most as the number 1 on all the reviews I read was Home Chef. This is a Kroger brand, and seems like people really liked the variety, liked the flavors, and I decided I was going to give that a shot to start off the year really well. So I ended up ordering 9 total meals. That does not seem like a lot for a whole month, but as a single person, that is actually 18 meals. And I was traveling for a whole week, so that was 18 meals in about a 3-week period. And I did want to have quicker meals for when I was traveling, and sometimes I had to eat out, things like that. So I felt like that was the right amount, ordering 3 meals a week for 3 separate weeks. For the first week, one recipe that I really wanted to seek out was seafood, because I never make seafood for myself. And I love seafood, but I don't know how to cook it or season it. And so the one time I ever bought salmon for myself, I hated it. And then I didn't want to waste my money because it's rather expensive. So I really, really wanted to pick something out the very first week that was seafood. So I found the lemon piccata butter salmon with zucchini. And it was a really good first pick. It was really delicious. I really enjoyed it. Had the best flavor combinations there, and I would never have made it myself, and that was a good start. You can see here that the zucchini was in ribbon form. I used a potato peeler on it, which I've never done. I've always just chopped my zucchini, and so I thought this was a really interesting new texture that I actually really enjoyed. I plated this. I did not think it was going to be enough food. This didn't look like that much, but it was definitely satisfying and enough. My second meal was the tortellini spinach artichoke. This was a meal that immediately stood out to me because I'm a sucker for pasta. I love pasta and I love spinach artichoke dip, and this seemed like it combined it. And this was definitely my favorite meal that I ate the entire month. It was originally vegetarian, and I ordered the chicken as an add-on, so that was more expensive. So this one was kind of a pricier meal as a whole compared to the other ones, and I felt like I could have got all of these ingredients from a regular store cheaper, but now that I know how to cook tortellinis this way, I don't know if I'll ever go back. The third meal of my very first week was barbacoa tacos, and barbacoa tacos was one of the ones that it suggested for me. So on the app, it will pick 3 meals for you, and you can just keep those, or you can pick something and change it. And I decided that every week I was going to keep one of the original suggestions and then change the other two. And the one I decided to keep the first week was barbacoa tacos. And this was probably a mistake on my part because it had onions, which I do not enjoy, and I thought, oh, you can just take those out and they'll still be okay, but they were just pretty mediocre tacos. For the most part, I thought they were okay. You can see that without onions, it's a pretty empty taco, mostly tortilla and not a lot of filling. This is what the meal kit looks like, by the way. It's a big Ziploc bag filled with all the ingredients except the meat, who's separate. I thought this worked out really well and convenient for how I put it in my fridge, as well as I used the Ziploc bag as a trash can while I was cooking to clean up. My biggest gripe with this meal probably was the amount of cheese. This was supposed to be enough for 6 tacos. This was barely enough for 2 tacos. The first meal that I had was once again salmon, which I should have diversified and done something different. But I was so impressed with the salmon the first week, and I thought it's a different recipe, but I'm still gonna love it just as much. Instead of zucchini, it came with green beans and mashed potatoes, and it was a very different seasoning. I did not like the seasoning nearly as much, didn't think it was very good, and the green beans were not cooked enough. And now you can say, why didn't you cook them longer? Well, they came in a pan that you had to cook everything together, so if I had done the green beans longer, I would have overcooked everything else. And then the mashed potatoes were just not very flavorful. When I got them out, they were very watery and gross. The second meal also came with mashed potatoes with steak and carrots, and that one was much better. I will say the steak took like almost twice as long as the recipe card said to do, and I promise I didn't overcook the steak. It just, maybe it's my stove, maybe it was the shape of the steaks because they both cooked a little differently, but it did take a little bit longer than I would have expected. But the flavoring on everything was delicious, the carrots were delicious, and this time the mashed potatoes were much better. They looked watery to start, but once I mixed everything into them and cooked them, they actually fluffed up perfectly. So that was a win. But then the third meal also came with green beans, and it also cooked together. And so since I was so unappetized by that on my first go around, I ended up just kind of skipping the green beans, which I know is food waste, but it is the way it is. And I honestly was like, this is the blandest meal. And if you see this picture, it looks so bland, but that was probably the best chicken breast I ever made. Just juicy and tender and so delicious in terms of seasoning that I am glad that I had this meal because it maybe taught me how to cook chicken breast better, because delicious. For the last week, I started off with pork chops, and that was a really last minute ad because I thought I was going to be gone for work that day. And so if like a day before it shipped, there was actually a lot of options, and this was one of them that was left. And it was supposed to be pretzel covered pork, and the pretzels didn't really stick to the pork. That's the main concern here. Could have been user error. I tried to follow the directions, but didn't really work that well. This was an okay meal. The second one was probably my second favorite of the entire month of January. This beef broccoli green pepper bowl. In fact, I would probably add green pepper to any time I make broccoli beef from now on, because this was a delicious flavor profile. I really enjoyed it. I could have eaten the entire thing, but I did pre-portion it out into 2 spots like it's supposed to be, but it was that good that I kept wanting more. And then finally, my last meal was burgers. I almost didn't get a picture of it, but I did. And I made this with my dad, so this is the only one that I didn't eat both parts of the meal. We made it together, and I've never made French fries out of potato. I always buy them frozen. I know that sounds like crazy, but I just never have. And I actually thought they turned out really well, and I might do this in the future. So that's what I wanted, was to explore more food options, and I got that. The only other thing is I had an add-on to this order. I added on the ciabatta buns, these everything ciabatta buns, and I didn't think they were that good. They weren't that expensive, but I wouldn't like just order the bread again because the quality was just mediocre. I really enjoyed this month of trying new recipes and foods from Meal Kit. I thought Home Chef was a good company with good variety and quality food. For the most part, I really was impressed. I will say that I looked at my budget and I spent like $100 more than I usually spend on food. There was a lot less food waste, but I did feel like I was spending quite a bit more than I would if I just went to the grocery store and bought my own food. But was it healthier? Probably. I think I ate more vegetables than I usually do, and I had some really good variety of protein. So definitely good in that regard. I'm going to be trying Blue Apron for the month of February. So I'll try to put another video out at the end of that month and tell you how it compares to this.